Antz. If there's one reason why people would still remember the movie to this day, it's because of the rivalry with A Bug's Life. Back in the mid-90s, when both films were in production, there have been many stories about the origins of Antz. While some have stated that the project was pitched during the early 90s, others claim that it was the first strike that made DreamWorks one of Disney's biggest rivals in animation. Since Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't get the president job at Disney from then CEO Michael Eisner, Jeffrey decided to take their concept of a computer-animated film about bugs and create his own as revenge, on top of releasing it almost 2 months before A Bug's Life to get the upper hand. But now that the second ever computer-animated feature is in the spotlight, will it deliver something more than A Bug's Life, or did DreamWorks made a bad first impression? Let's find out. The story. It's a bit of a tough call to say what the story really is about. On one hand, it looks into the life of Z, a nervous and anxious ant who's not happy with his life as just an insignificant worker in a giant colony and suddenly falls in love with a princess. On the other hand, it also contains another plot where Z is on a quest to quit his colony in order to go to this bug paradise known as Insectopia. Either way, there is a bit of a feeling like there isn't a lot of story to this film because these two plot lines have a different function. The one about Insectopia feels more like the actual narrative since it's more clear on what the goal and the journey to go through is, and the other on the life of Z is more about setting the world that the movie is set in, answering questions like who the important characters are, where are they, how they live in their culture, and the different classes. The latter would take more time than the actual plot itself, but in that regard, it's probably the strongest aspect of the movie. It really does take the time to look into this new world and how it works in order to present a functioning society. It even includes what would go on outside of the ant colony and their relationship with other bugs along with their own legends.
You can be your own ant there. The streets are paved with food. Nobody telling you what to do. No wars, no colony.
However, there are some elements that do connect everything together to have it feel like one big movie. One of these include the film's message of individualism and asking the question, is it better to think for yourself or just to follow the crowd? It does explain a good message and can present the many possibilities that come with it, making it more the core theme of the film. The big issue that would come with it though is that the movie doesn't have any subtlety, so there are times when it does feel like it's trying to hammer it hard that you must think for yourself and not follow orders blindly! Like the ants themselves, the story is not the strongest colony, but the elements can be strong on their own. The animation. Considering that this is the second computer animated feature to ever be released, I will forgive it for not having the best animation from DreamWorks. As a late 90s film, you will see components that make it feel dated and that it was made at a time when the medium was at its infancy. Like how the rendering was weak, the textures look weird, and the character animation doesn't feel smooth. But again, it's a late 90s film, and at its time, this was state-of-the-art. In fact, even if the character animation is not DreamWorks' finest, you can still see how the animators gave it their all when crafting this. Also, there are still some visual elements that are still impressive to this day, one of which being the grand scale of the environment and successfully capturing the point of view of an ant. In many shots of the film, it shows how big the colony can be where this one big hole can hold millions upon millions of ants, and even when Z and Bala would go to the outside world, the production design and layouts take the time to make all the ordinary small things look huge and add as much detail as it can, where a regular picnic can look like a literal mountain of food. One important note about this film though is that it is also a historical movie for being the first to present digital water. And it's done pretty well, too.
Hold on, I'll get you out, hold on.
If I do have to put in some criticism here, it would be more on the character design. It would seem like it's trying a realistic route by making a human-ant hybrid, and although it's admirable that they can make them look individually different, there is a bit of an uncanny feeling how they try to look like something that should be in our world. That, and its color palette makes the film a little unpleasant to watch. Sure, there are some colorful moments outside of the colony, but for the most part, it just looks very muddy, where most of it is just a variety of a brown and red mix and a little bit of green. Even with some technical limitations, the animation still works out well and is pretty nice for something from 1998. The characters. One recognizable component from Antz is the use of an all-star cast. Each character is meant to fit the actor perfectly to play the part in the film. However, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, they do fit the role well, but maybe they fit too well. The characters have so much in common in terms of their personality and trait to their voices that you can only see the actors and not who they're playing. You got Woody Allen as the anxious Z, Sharon Stone as the love interest from royalty Bala, Sylvester Stallone as the muscular good friend Weaver, Gene Hackman as the tough and power-hungry General Mandible, Jennifer Lopez as Azteca, who loves her work and falls for Weaver, Christopher Walken as Mandible's assistant Cutter, the list goes on. It's not that they're bad or anything like that. In fact, many of them are pretty likable and the actors do deliver a solid performance. But it's just hard to get the illusion that they are ants instead of just seeing the actors just being themselves. But if I may take a moment to look more into Z, the biggest significance with the guy is that not only is he the main character, but he's also responsible for carrying the movie's humor. It's because of this why it's probably the closest thing we'll get to an animated Woody Allen film, since he is the star and his style of comedy really presents itself with his pessimistic wit and cynicism. At that point, it would really depend on your taste. If you're a Woody Allen fan, then you can get into this film very easily. If you're not familiar with his works, then you're gonna have an awkward 80 minutes.
You know, I was gonna let you become part of my most erotic fantasies, but now you can just forget that, write it off, you know? I guess what you prefer is old blood and guts.
Z, the less we know about your erotic fantasies, the better. In fact, let's hope those fantasies aren't the same ones that got you in trouble with those allegations. Sure, the characters are just the actors playing themselves, but some can argue that there is a bit of charm to them and can be enjoyable to watch. Maybe they're not believable, but you do get some good acting out of it. It's guaranteed that you'll find some problems, but for what it is, I can find some appreciation for it. Antz is one of the movies that gave computer animation a good start next to the early Pixar films by presenting a well-thought-out world to show the life of ants, nice animation, and a cast that delivers a great performance. Sure, it holds on to some issues as well, like a story that's barely present, humor that's catered to a limited audience, characters that aren't hiding that they're just the actors voicing digital ants, and the animation can be dated, but they're not enough to keep this movie away from being an enjoyable watch. If you're interested to see some early computer animation or want to see some of DreamWorks' origins, you might be pleasantly surprised with what you get. Now, we know that DreamWorks has evolved as an animation studio ever since, but it's still important to go and look back where it all began. Before the dragons, before Kung Fu, and even before the fairy tales, they were just a small ant who would make a big impact in the colony. Hey guys, this is AniMat's. Now, I'm pretty sure at this point there are a lot of people that are wondering, now that I did do a review of both Antz and A Bug's Life, where would I put myself in the battle? Would I go with Team Antz or with Team Bug's Life? Because that's pretty much one of the most well-known battles that's going on in animation, or at least when you put two movies together, which one is the best out of these two, because they're both very similar, considering that they are both computer animated features starring Antz, released in 1998. Well, if I may put my own piece onto this, personally, I feel like A Bug's Life is actually the superior film. And even though they are both good movies in their own right, I just feel like A Bug's Life would just take one step further to make itself a little bit more enjoyable with Antz. Allow me to explain. In terms of story, with A Bug's Life, it has a narrative that is a lot more clear. You could tell that there is a little bit more story into it, where compared to Antz, there isn't a lot of story. It's more character building and world building at the same time. We learn a lot more about who these characters are, like Z and Weaver and the colony that they are in, like in the little hole in the ground, and like when they go into the outside world with the Monolith or Insectopia. We learn more about that than the actual journey, or what is the actual goal. So that's where A Bug's Life would have the upper hand. And even in the animation, A Bug's Life actually does take more advantage in terms of character design, where not only do they look more like actual cartoon bugs, where with Antz they try to go a little bit more realistic with the human ant hybrid thing. It kind of does look weird. But with The Bug's Life, not only are the character designs are a bit better, and also a lot more creative, considering that they do present so many more bugs than in Antz, but also A Bug's Life is actually a lot more colorful. Like, you can see such a huge variety of colors in there. Like, even with the ants themselves, that they can be like a mix of like light blue or pink or purple and all that kind of stuff. Where with Antz, most of it feels monotone with that brown-red mix. It's not necessarily pleasant in terms of its color palette. And finally, in terms of the characters, now, I know that both these movies would use an all-star cast, but the one thing that A Bug's Life does take advantage of is that even though there are recognizable actors, they are playing characters. Like, even though Dave Foley is voicing Flick, you mostly see Flick. And even though Kevin Spacey is voicing Hopper, you actually see Hopper. Where in Antz, on the other hand, it's just that you see more the actors than the characters, because the characters are just being the actors. Like, Z is being Woody Allen. Sylvester Stallone, Weaver is being Sylvester Stallone, and Mandible is being Gene Hackman, and Cutter is being Christopher Walken. So that's why, like, even though, yes, they are enjoyable characters, but they're just being the actors. So that's at least how I personally feel. It's just A Bug's Life takes it one step further to be a more enjoyable film overall. At least that's my take. I know that some people might feel a bit different, that maybe Antz is better than A Bug's Life and stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine. But at least that's just my own take on the whole battle of Antz versus A Bug's Life. But anyways, that is pretty much it. Oh, and oh my god, I forgot about one thing. I just want to go and give a huge thanks to Red Bandit 101 for actually doing this amazing support on Patreon, so that he can actually go and get this review of Antz. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that right in the beginning. But anyways, okay, we're done with Antz now, and now it is time that we go and move on to the animation hat. But before I get into that, I just want to mention right now, if you guys would like to be like Red Bandit and you want to go and support my work while getting some awesome rewards like this at the same time, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But also, if you guys would like to suggest to me an animated film you would like me to review and put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is go to animatsreviews@gmail.com. Just write me an email right there. Okay, so, wow, that was fast. Okay, well, it's just immediately like, yump. Alright, so anyways, the next review shall be... Oh, Oh, finally. Oh my god. Wow, alright. Now, this is kind of a first for me, honestly, because every time I get into this franchise, it really annoys me, honestly, because this is legit, nowadays, one of those franchises that just refuses to die, and there's sequel after sequel coming out, and they just get worse and worse because they're clearly running out of ideas. But now, let's just at least go back to the time that we remember that it was actually good. Before all the bullcrap sequels came out, there was actually this one movie that was actually good about it. Finally, let's just get back to when there's just one thing, no extra characters, just 3 prehistoric animals trying to take care of a baby. That's it! Oh, and maybe a crazy squirrel at the same time.
Hey, it is crap. Not bad.